me again. Let's read Luke chapter 18. I believe I'm going to read verses 10 through 14. It's a parable. Let me see. If I can get it in the camera zone. I can't keep it in the zone very well. 2 men went up into the temple to pray, the one a Pharisee and the other a publican. And the Pharisee stood and prayed thus with himself, God, I thank thee that I am not as other men are, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, or even as this publican. I fast twice in the week. I give tithes of all that I possess. And the publican, standing afar off, would not lift up so much as his eyes unto heaven, but smote upon his breast, saying, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. I tell you, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other. For every one that exalteth himself shall be abased, and he that humbleth himself shall be exalted. I believe what that's talking about, being self-righteous and arrogant. Now, there's nothing wrong with thanking God for things He kept you from, because for the grace of God, there goes something everybody should see, but not to exalt yourself over the others, because it could have very well been you that fall into certain traps. I mean, I remember my dad used to, toward the latter end of his life, every time he'd pass a liquor store, he'd point at it and say, I beat you again, devil. And I never seen my dad drink in my whole life. But he had spiritual integrity, if that's the right way to put it, to know that if it wasn't for God, he could have been laying in the gutter with a bottle. Thankfully, he wasn't. Unfortunately, by the time let me rephrase that. Fortunately and thankfully, by the time I come along, my dad had gotten in church and started living right and doing things more or less the way he should be. I'm not saying everything was completely perfect, but he tried. And for the most part, I think he lived what he preached. Ain't no human perfect. Ain't none of. If you think you're perfect, you best be reading that Bible, because chances are you ain't. Chances are you got a flaw of some kind. I mean, it's good to be thankful that God picked. No matter how good you were without Him, God still picked you up out of that miry clay and cleaned you up and set you on the rock to stay if you are living for Him. Because, like I said, people have flaws. And the more we operate in our carnal flesh, the more flawed we are. I mean, unfortunately, if I thought I wasn't flawed, well, get me at a buffet and I'll find out different. I look in the mirror, I can find out. See one of them, my biggest one probably. But that's beside the point. Let's not be arrogant and not be self-righteous. And those that maybe still are in that miry clay, for example, hey, instead of bashing them, or try to, at least to God, instead of telling God how horrible they are, God already knows anyway. Maybe pray for their souls. Pray that they can get right. And that God will keep working on them. And eventually, when they decide they'll let Him, then He will pick them up out of the miry clay. I think everybody has family that they'd like to see get right. I got family I'd like to see in church again. And And I would rather, hopefully they get in church. I'd rather they get in church than destroy them. I'd rather them get right with God than be destroyed. Uh, I'm not saying condone everybody things that are wrong, but let's not be arrogant and not be self-righteous. Because like I said, anything good, anything about us that's good come from God, not us. And you look at the worst sinner in the world. If it wasn't for God, that could have been you. That's something we all need to remember. Let's not try to put ourselves up above everybody else, but maybe we need to pray for each other and pray. And if you get a new convert in your church, I highly recommend praying for them because the devil's going to come after them. So pray for God's protection. And let's be careful and not be too rash when something makes us angry, or not be too rash in condemning people, I guess you should say. And thanks for watching. Good night and God bless.